So there is a line of questioning that comes through Discord to us a lot of the time. And there's lots of different types of this question that we get. And so we decided we wanted to, instead of do a community question for this topic, bring our whole selves to this and
bring our main topic game.
Yeah, bring our main topic game, okay? So the overarching theme of this is, how do you stay centered and keep the positive vibe when things you see are so negative, right? Anytime that you've got a community of thousands of customers across the world who are all experiencing like life on this planet right now, the feedback that you get from them is going to be, there's going to be quite a bit of negativity coming through. It's just impossible to avoid. And people in our community know and see that sometimes that directed at us, it really sucks. It's not nice, okay? There's a lot of not nice things on the internet. There's one specific wording of this question that I want to read out loud that came from Bruton Gaster, okay?
We'll sit through it.
Okay. Bruton says, constantly amazed at how generous Mark and Tom are in responding to ignorant and asinine comments. Can I say asinine on the podcast?
I think that's a real word.
Tackle them with humility and grace and keep an appearance of positivity even when crap hits the fan. Other creators mock the kind of community that you build. What keeps you going in this space and building the community even when sometimes the community is part of the challenge, okay? There have also been some offshoots of this kind of question. Is being positive something that comes easily? Or is it more of a learned skill? Are some people less positive than others? And my personal favorite, do you have a scream corner? At Orange Nebula. So let's kind of tackle this from the top. Like,
yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, I was like one at a time.
Let's tackle this from the top, okay? So how do we stay positive as a team when we are seeing so much negativity coming? And I think I specifically want to talk about in our responses back to people, okay? This outward response that we're giving when we are receiving a specific negative comment to us. How do we take that negativity and turn it into the kind of response that people see us giving so often in the community? What's step zero, okay? Negative comment comes in. Tom, what's step zero there? Negative comment comes in. What happens next in Orange Nebula headquarters?
I think, there are two things that are true here. One is that there's an extent to which this does come naturally because it has and I'm sure we'll get into all of this more deeply, but just high level, it does, from a certain point of view, come naturally because it is at the core of what we're trying to do and at the core of who we are as people and who we're trying to be as people. So yes, that is an instinct that we have. Mm-hmm. At the same time, it is a discipline and a skill that we have developed and are developing, and that is hard. Mm-hmm. So both those things are true at the same time. Mm-hmm. But when something really negative hits, step one is recognizing, this is something that Malia says a lot, recognizing like that is a person. There's a person talking right now. And I think it's really easy and natural on the internet to forget that there's another person because you can't see the person, you can't hear the person, there's no body language, there's just words that you're reading, just like reading anything else on the internet. And so what you end up thinking about is you're not thinking about this other person, you're thinking about yourself. And so we don't see a person, we see ourselves in these things, and that's where reactions tend to come from. Mm-hmm. And so the first discipline that we have is recognizing that is a person. And the experience that they're having is very, very real for them. And that's really step one, is just empathize with whatever that person is experiencing and go jump in.
I was going to say, even if we don't feel like it's warranted, we still are I feel like we very much see it as but that is a feeling that they're feeling about us.
It's still very real for them,
and it's really, really real.
There's still the experience they're having with this Orange Nebula thing it's a feel bad for them right now. And that is real regardless of whether, something crappy is happening, and sometimes it is, or whether it's just perceived and they're super wrong and there's things they really don't understand about the situation. regardless of where things are landing on that spectrum, they're having a very real experience, and we have to acknowledge that first for them to validate them, and also for us, so that is the lens through which we are responding.
But like, isn't there like a step 0 before that step 1? Like when you first see the content come through, do you not have a little moment where it
Sometimes
feels that way? You're offended. It hurts.
I feel like it definitely depends, because I think it depends on, I think, tone, obviously. If people are calling us names, like that is, I think also we're a little like miffed about it. But there are some times where it's like you're genuinely they're confused and they just need some additional information to kind of to help them
So
understand.
a lot of times that's obvious.
And that's, I think, but the ones that are more
Mean.
particularly insulting, we definitely collaborate more on those ones, because I feel like we are humans too. Like those words impact us.
She feels like we're humans, but
Yeah. you know. So a lot of times we do kind of have to like talk it out and make
you see
weird
what that person
noises
said?
and
Yes.
just and yeah, we have to kind of get that like energy out of ourselves or like vent about it or
Do you feel that way too, Mark? I mean, you've kind of had this from the beginning where, yes, there's a lot of positivity that comes through, but even from the beginning, there's lots of negativity that comes through. Do you feel like you have that kind of painful reaction first? What's that like for you?
Yeah, there's definitely an emotional response that happens immediately because everybody here has a really high level of ownership and is a reflection of the people here. And generally speaking, I agree with everything that we're saying here about we've missed their expectations somehow, and they're either frustrated or confused or don't feel important, and then they view us as a company and not as human beings, and so that feels like we don't feel seen.
like they're misunderstanding us.
Or
something.
not seeing us as people the same way
Yeah.
that we say it's important for us to see them as people. When you said you see them as a company, you don't think about like the people behind the company the same way it's our job to see them as people behind a screen.
Well, there's this weird perpetual motion machine where them saying I don't feel seen makes us feel not seen because
Yeah.
we're seeing them so hard. And like, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And it's kind of like going to the gym. When early on when we started the company, I felt everything because everything was a judgment and taking it personally. And it's really hard not to do that when you're so passionate.
Yeah, when the product and everything is such a reflection of yourself.
Yeah.
You identify with it.
Yeah, and I think what you find over time is it's the same reason that I don't hit snooze on my alarm clock anymore is because I don't want to be defeated by my alarm clock. I don't want my feelings to get in the way of my commitments. And so it's like going to the gym. My feelings don't play a part in the decision. How I feel is not part of the equation or the calculation anymore because I've decided that that's not who I want to be. I want to be somebody who is healthy for my family, for my team, for myself, so that I have energy. And so responding to people, what they're feeling is real. We handle it, but it's not for me to carry emotionally, right? I've never met this person. And the other part of this that's really difficult to justify is it's very difficult for us to be in the position where we have a responsibility without an authority. And so what I mean by that is almost all of the reputation hurting comments and things have to do with fulfillment and logistics or damage that we had nothing to do with, right? But we're responsible for that because we sold them the game and like this is what's happening. But we are responsible for that, but we don't really have the authority or the power other than to like advocate to the people that we've hired to do their job. And that's a really, really difficult, unfair feeling position to be in.
Yeah.
And it feels maybe like easy to point a finger and try to like move blame to another place, but that doesn't
That
actually...
gets no one anywhere.
No,
Like,
no one.
if someone says, hey, I'm having a really bad experience, and you say, well, that's their fault. It's like, well,
who's
okay,
gonna
I'm
fix
still
it?
having a bad experience. I don't care whose fault it is. And then it like and then they don't feel, then, you know, and then we are not seeing them. You know, we're seeing ourselves.
Well, and
yeah.
in like a public space, like throwing our partners under the bus is also us not seeing our partners.
Oh yeah.
You know, like so we take ownership of even their shortcomings because they're people too, and fulfillment is a really hard job. Like, and I think people don't realize that either. Like,
And there's something really empowering, I think, about taking responsibility for things, even when they're not your fault, because it takes you out of this victimhood space and into a position of power. I try to teach my 12-year-old that all the time, you know, when I'm like trying to get them to just take responsibility for something. And it's so easy for them to point and say, but this person. I'm like, but if you actually have responsibility for it, then you have the power to change the situation, to act on the situation, to change the feelings happening in a situation.
It also puts us in, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, or to hold their hand through the situation that you don't have the power to change.
Sure.
You know, I can't
Be there with them.
transport and like teleport myself to, you know, Europe and ship their package for them. All I can do is for the 17th time send another email or get on the phone and have them not pick up, you know, or whatever, and then go back to the client and be like, well, where is it? Well, we're trying to find that out. There's a long, you know, the chain is 5 levels deep.
I know it's frustrating. It's for us too. We're right here with you.
We're here with you. It is frustrating, and I would feel just like you know, like, and that's the tack that we've taken most recently, and that was all I was going to add to that.
And just to what you were saying about taking ownership of everything, it keeps our focus on the right thing, which is the experience of the community member. And because if we don't do that, then we have to wade through this trap of like, well, whose fault is it? Or this isn't fair, or like our feelings about this, whatever. But if we just say, you know, to ourselves, like, regardless of what is or isn't fair, this whole thing is our responsibility. They signed up to our Kickstarter. We picked these vendors that they're having this experience with. Like, yes, we are not right now physically capable of influencing that situation, but we set up that situation, and regardless, just we have ownership of it, and then that keeps our focus on their experience instead of getting lost in these weeds that doesn't actually help them.
Which I think we're as our specific company very well suited to focusing on their experience because of the type of company and products that we create, right? Our whole purpose is to create positive experiences.
It's less about the type of products we create and more about the like why they're being created, the like motivation behind the existence of the company in general. You know, when we talk about what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, we don't say any of these things like, well, we want to make games that are fun. We want to make the best games in the world, or we want to make high quality games, or things that bring families together, or all these things you might hear about games. You know, the conversations that we have are about, you know, making a platform for people to have deeper, more meaningful experiences, or uncover things about themselves through these experiences, or have community with like-minded people. And so like our whole lens and motivation for doing any of this is when we focus on that, then the actual products aren't the point. So making games of substance, or making other products of substance, or doing quote-unquote customer service or community care, or however you want to frame it, it's all the same thing, which is connecting with people. And so when we have that foundation, then, you know, taking care of people and responding to their hurt or their frustration or whatever isn't like this grueling byproduct of what we're really trying to do, this thing that we have to get through. It's as equally the main thing as making the stuff.
It wouldn't even make sense to respond any differently if we were really in line with our values.
Well, and I guess I hadn't even thought about it like that too. Like if the customer service experience was heavily negative, then I feel like playing our games would lose the impact of the experience as well.
The whole thing has to be the main focus. It's all one thing.
They would open our games, play our games, and be like, oh, but I had a really crappy experience with them online. Like, or, you know, and that would impact the experience of actually playing the game too.
If the whole point is to touch people, and that's why we're making these games. Like, it would be so short-sighted to have the actual experience where we're interacting with them or seeing their overall experience with acquiring the game as not equally, if not more important.
I think it's why it being a discipline is so important. If we led with our feelings from the beginning and just were like, this one is really bad and I'm offended on this one and this one deserves a different type of response, you know, then we would have a totally different community. But instead, because we've built this discipline of this type of response, anytime that something very negative does come in, especially in any sort of public nature, you can see people who have been around for any amount of time saying, hey, maybe you're new here. You know, they take really good care. I'm sure they're going to get to you, you know, and will back up those values that have been part of the discipline from the beginning, which is the gift of like long-term discipline to a value that your community sees it and reflects it back.
Yeah, one of the pinnacles of doing this well is when we feel like we've converted a troll into an advocate. And then what happens is, because they're so vocal and emotional, you know, with their outrage or their sometimes entitlement, I'll just say that, when you bring them in and they feel heard and they feel valuable, a lot of times they will then go staunchly defend us to other people.
It reminds me of the Misunderstood series.
Well, and the funny thing is, the lesson there is we all can be that. Like it, you have to look at these things as what we share in common. And I find, you know, sometimes I'm like, you know, Amazon's 4 days late with my package. What's that about? You're like, why am I, you know, really? Like, don't I have more important things to do?
Many of our, like, most active, most loving, most full and wonderful community members, we were first introduced to them by them, like, blowing the door open and just, like, screaming with rage, and they hate us, and they cannot believe that we are allowed to exist as human beings, and they're just so upset.
And you know what's behind that? Like, a lot of passion.
Exactly. And that's what it's like, well, better than indifference. Like,
right? But like, back to the most important question in this, like, do we have a scream corner? You know,
We
like,
should.
each other, really.
Yeah.
Like, we have our Slack chat where we
have a process, and the process is, the low-hanging fruit can be handled pretty easily, but if we have a live one, then it goes to Tom, because Tom has special words. He's able to kind of put his emotions into a cage momentarily and squeak out the beautiful magical words that he does and soothe.
He's like
the
our
beast
secret
on the other
weapon, I feel
he
like.
is a secret weapon, and we utilize him in that way.
Well, and I feel like something that I've noticed is that, like, when Tom has to address these people,
these people.
While he does the empathy thing, but something that I've like taken note for myself is also to communicate our heart, because clearly in their experience, they aren't seeing what we are motivated by or how we care about them and their experience. And so, and I feel like he does a really good job, I like to think I do a fairly good job at this.
Great job.
At saying, yeah, this is what we actually want your experience to be like, and you're not having that right now. And we like acknowledge that part. And I feel like a lot of people,
if you do that right,
that.
There's a fine line there where we want to reveal to people what our intentions are and what our motivation is and who we are, but in a way where it is still focused on their experience as being real and not us defending ourselves.
I remember like trying to deflect
and
from
that's a
the
weird
issue.
thing. That's a hard needle to thread, because as soon as you start talking about yourself, like, it's either going to be negative or defensive, or very easily be received that way. And so keeping the focus on them is
You do find that over time, the discipline becomes so intrinsic that it just becomes the way that we handle these things because of our values. And you do start to care less and less about letting that affect you emotionally. It's just like, yeah, we got another one. Like,
It does.
just misunderstood. Let's just take care of him.
Some of them are nasty though. Like there are things that do affect people. Like messages will come through and it's just like, you know, like either it's so incredibly upsetting that you have no choice but to get mad or hurt. Like people have cried at the office. Like some of the messages are gnarly and there's no and so the what we have found is that the best way to deal with that is to not be like, well, I'm at work and I'm in work mode and I have to not let this affect me. It's like, no, like you're not going to be able to emotionally engage with this person and like perceive their emotions as valid if you're not in touch with emotion. So let yourself feel all the things that you're feeling, but just deal with them responsibly. Talk to someone else at work, like, and feel it. Let your emotions be valid too, but don't let that be where you're. If you respond out of that, what you're reacting. Mark says this a lot. He's like, we need to respond, not react. And your emotions trigger a reaction. Well, do that to your team.
Yeah.
And then you are still in touch with emotions, so then you can understand their emotions, but what you're giving back is focused on their emotions and not your own.
Yeah, and I feel like a practical example is that sometimes one of us will draft the email response and then sit on it or hand it off to somebody else. Like, can you make sure that this is communicating right and it's not communicating out of our negative emotion? Or we'll draft it and then be like, I'm going to sit and think about this and come back in an hour or whatever. We try not to let it go very long, but it's very much like a collaborative environment. Like I feel like when stuff is really difficult is when I'll like throw an email at Tom and be like, hey, I wrote this response. This is this guy's experience. What do you think about that? And sometimes he rewrites the entire email, but sometimes he's like, let me just tweak a little thing and then you're good to go.
Sometimes there is a level of toxicity or malevolence that needs to be addressed, I think, from someone in a position of authority. That does happen occasionally. And I have found that the longer you let some of these feelings go unresponded to, the more amplified people tend to want to be to get their point.
The deeper roots grow.
Yeah. But there are some times where something feels like we've received threats, and you know, I generally respond very swiftly to any type of a threat and become very firm and clear.
Yeah, when those things come up, Mark or I are just like, oh, we got this one.
Yeah, and it's handled very swiftly. And there is when we say we have a heart and we want to reach and touch people, we mean that. But there are boundaries to what you need to allow into the organization and into the community, and we also take those very seriously. So I just want to make sure that that's clear from our perspective. There's a tolerance that we have that's good, and then there's a level at which we shut things down very swiftly and are not afraid to do that at all.
It is fun having hyperbolic reactions to some of these things with each other.
So true.
So like sometimes someone will screenshot a comment and send it to me, and I just lean into having a really over the top reaction because I think not only is it fun, it's also I think cathartic and healing and helpful, and then it kind of disarms it a little bit because then you're like, well, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and you get it out. You get out that like obviously this is not valid. Like we can all agree this is ridiculous.
Right. But this is the time I will swear a bunch this week. You know, like it is fun. It's
and
fun.
I feel like then it like turns that. I feel like then it changes our experience too because we're laughing about it now instead of this anger.
Yeah, it's therapy.
It is.
All of this makes me think a little bit about like the instinct. If you said something like the comments that we get sometimes to someone else, the natural instinct of a human is to defend yourself, right? And so it is a specific skill or trait, I think, that makes it so that a person has the instinct to instead transmute that negative energy into a connective experience. And that's not something that really it doesn't come naturally. It's something you have to build. And so I think what I'm asking is like, who hurt you, Tom?
I was going to say, you know, depending on your life circumstances, it does come naturally to you. Like that does come naturally to me. But like you said, I think some of that's just my personality. But I think in my case, you know, it does come from childhood things and stuff that I learned as a child to, you know, protect myself or, you know, siblings or parents and loved ones, and like in hostile type environments where I became sort of this emotional caretaker and I don't want to say manipulator, but that's kind of, you know, it's like I'm going to go through and make sure everyone is, you know, protected and built up, and well, here's what that person actually meant, and I'm going to like understand the motivations of everyone talking, so then I can kind of help translate that for like, well, you're getting hurt by that, but this is what they're really saying. And so that is my day-to-day experience. Like I sit in a room and I'm always just attuned to the feelings of everyone in the room and where that's probably coming from, and someone will say something and there's a little graph going off in my head for every person in the room about how they're probably feeling about that.
So interesting.
And you know, so I'm like, so a day with people is very exhausting to me on this front, because I am like hyper vigilant, attuned to what's going on with every, you know, so, you know, one person will be talking, but I'm paying attention to all 13 people in the room.
Looking at all the body language.
Right. And so that is just part of my experience. And it does come from, I don't know, trauma or just life, you know, in general. And I'm sure that's true in varying ways to everyone on the team.
But we do level up together because of that, because we watch these things happen. And to your point, it's something to be proud of too, as you learn to manage these situations against your emotions, and you start to make good decisions for others. Maybe you can manage yourself a little bit better, and then maybe you can take that into managing your family a little bit better, and then maybe you can take that into building out your community a little better, and it makes us stronger contributors to society in that way. And I know maybe that sounds really deep or something, but I really think these skill sets create leadership qualities that are really valuable in this culture that we have. And I love watching how people handle things, and I love learning from the team. You know, everybody here just levels up all the time in, you know, by the way we use those strengths from the strengths finders, like, gosh, Eric's really good at this thing, or Chase is really good at this thing, or Malia's really good at this thing, and then we all kind of incrementally get better at those things.
And having a group of people that are dedicated to getting better at those things, and that are dedicated to having these conversations where we keep bringing ourselves back. So it never turns into like, who's going to go handle this PR situation? You know, who's going to fix this customer who's being an absolute, you know, bleep on social media? Like how, you know, so it's not letting ourselves ever fall into the trap where that just becomes like a thing that needs to be handled, instead of like, hey, remember why we're doing this and how we want to do it and the point of doing it. And so like, that conscious intent in how we do everything is a choice that we have to make every single day.
Yeah, we are not dragging our feet to go respond to people, even if it's upsetting. Like, I feel like we all very much want to take care of that person. And it's I feel like when we are questioning who's going to take care of it, it's more about like, who has the skill set or the knowledge or the
capacity.
The capacity. Like, it's
well,
not.
And the way that we frame it, where it's not who's going to take care of that, is who's best suited to help that person.
Yes. Yeah.
And insisting that we keep coming back to that framework, even when the grind tries to push us into a point where it's just like, this is just the thing that needs to get done.
It's about who we are. It's about who we want to be. You know, how alive do we want to be as a brand and as a company? And a lot of times it is doing the grunt work or the dirty work of handling a difficult situation. But I think it really is offset by the fact that let's show them, you know, our value, like what we're made of. And that's a powerful thing.
So there's this collective we that all want to respond this way and all want to live out our values this way. But inside this collective we, there's also a lot of I's. And each I also has their own level of capacity. Like, how do we deal with that? You know?
Yeah, that I definitely have learned that I have a limit. Depending on how many hours I've been looking at it, how many negative comments or emails I've had to deal with in that day, I have to acknowledge, like, I have a point where I can feel myself pulling back from
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 connection.
caring.
From connection, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Connection. From caring, from even seeing seeing an email as a person. Like, it all of a sudden becomes like, that is my computer and it has terrible words on it and it's not a person communicating with me. And when I have low capacity for any of it, I have to stop myself and be like, it's okay, I can stop today, because, and I think I have to.
Yeah, you should stop today.
Even if I have tons of emails to respond to, I think I serve people better by knowing that limit, and having the knowledge of myself to say, I can no longer give the best of myself to them.
Yeah, tap someone else in for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And that takes an element of self-knowing and connection to self.
Mm-hmm.
The backbone of being able to see people and create experiences where people actually deeply connect is being able to see yourself and deeply connect to yourself. And the moment that you abandon that is the moment that you abandon the value that will lead to the experience.
Yeah, if you're not in touch
build.
with your own emotions, you're certainly not going to be in touch with theirs.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
That's very deep, guys.
Welcome to the couch.
I feel like I've met my capacity.
You know who doesn't have a capacity is Amber. We can't have this episode without talking about Amber.
Yeah.
Amber's capacity is basically limitless.
Wow.
Her empathy and her ability to keep bringing connection to people's emotions and wanting to love on them through and around the things that are being thrown at her feels limitless. And it is inspiring to see. She will respond to hate-filled emails for 12 hours. And then it's like, are you okay? And she's like, I am great. Like, I brought so much love to people today. And it's just like,
why does that make me tingle in my chest?
it should, because it's beautiful. It's amazing.
And then I also, the inverse, just to talk about the positive, she will get an email from somebody that and it will just have some quippy closer or something, and she carries that around the rest of the day. I'll get on the phone with her and she's like, this person said haha joke, whatever, insert quippy thing, and she's like and you can feel like she's carrying that positive thing, and I feel like it is kind of maybe a discipline, would you say, for her to be able to put down the negative and hang on to this little cute fun
Well, and
thing.
people say amazing things, and this episode probably isn't the one to get all into that, but we get incredibly generous and loving emails from people that affect us way more than the negative ones do. They stick with you. I have the emails that I received 5 years ago that I still think about sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe that person shared that thing, and said that to us and took the time out of their day to say that.
Some people will just write us not even with an issue. They'll just
I know,
write
that
us.
always blows my mind. And I read the email again. I'm like, so what is this person? Oh, they
don't
connecting.
need anything?
Love you
sure?
too.
Do you send a wall of animal emojis?
Joke. Send.
They do. They'll just be like, remember to hydrate, guys. You're doing
Oh,
a great
yeah.
job. We get those a lot.
Yeah.
That's just
Sweet.
Can you tell them that?
No.
Oh.
He knows his limits.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not doing
No.
it. That's special. Well, I'm curious.
That's special.
I'm curious from people who are listening or watching on YouTube that want to leave a comment. Do you have a scream corner? How are you dealing with this? Because we're not the only people who live on the internet right now, okay? Everyone who is existing and is spending time on the internet or just around with people is experiencing negativity. And sometimes it's warranted because you've done something wrong and you need to listen and hear that. And sometimes it's absolutely not warranted. How are you transmuting those kind of negative feelings into more positive opportunities for connection? How are you knowing your limits? Are there people in your life who are really good at this that you can kind of shout out as an example? We'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, teach us some new tricks.
Yeah, teach us.
So like let's
Tell
say
us.
hypothetically that you have an email back and forth with someone every single day for 2 weeks, and then suddenly they get in the Kickstarter comments and say that you've ghosted them and they haven't heard from you for 3 months. And that's just a flat out lie. But here they are saying it in public. How would you handle that? Give us some tips and tricks. We will use them.
We have more of these.
And if you have any questions or topics that you want us to talk about on the Outpost, you can put them in Discord. You can go to orangenebula.com/Discord to get there. It's wildly active in there. You'll have a great time, and we might read and talk about what your question is right here on the Outpost, just like
How dare
Bruton.
you.
Just like Bruton.
Bruton.
Bruton Gasser, thanks for sending this
That
our
was,
way.
that was a great question.
This was fun to talk about.
This was a whole conversation that was like it took great like to read through it without feeling awkward because it was
I know,
very
you did a good job.
yeah, and like AJ had a wall of text about it. Like there was so much stuff that people.
It's very cathartic to go
Yeah.
through this.
All right, y'all. You have a good day, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Hello, everyone. We've got everybody on the couch here today. We've got Lacey. We've got Malia. We've got Tom.
That's so good.
And Mark, I don't want to hear from you right now. We're going to go ahead and move forward.
His Lacey's always been really good.
So to get back to the actual question that this was about, I think we're actually asking what is the point of being here on the couch? And you have now gone off on a tangent, and I'm going to bring us back.
I'm going to have my usual. Today it is a cappuccino, but tomorrow my usual will be a cortado.
She's not wrong.
Honestly, I don't remember at all.
I just wrote, Tom, consistently personal development with people.
I just
I can't believe you did that.
Is that Malia?
He's like, that's what he does.
that's okay. It could be extra. Did you have string cheese for breakfast like a
It
grown
looked
A man?
Let's see where this is
grown
going.
A man.
What'd you have for breakfast? Lunchables.
Aw.
Outpost day is not my day.
I think that, Tom, the way you're finding emojis is inefficient.
I typed animals.
Well, what animal were you looking for?
I don't know. A bunch. We send walls of emojis.
I see. So
Yes.
you just typed animals because you wanted a bunch of emoji options so that you could put hundreds of emojis.
Yes.
And you couldn't like type a word for every single animal.
that would have been less
efficient
efficient to
Yeah.
be like, and
Okay.
now I want, a shrimp.
All right. I
Shrimp?
heard
I would just want to see
A
a bunch
shrimp.
of, and then I just let the spirit move me
I
on which
wasn't-
animals Clara needs
Also-
right now. Gangbusters.